Welcome to the Revolution Church podcast.
Okay, hello everyone, and happy Easter. So, this is going to be a little bit different today. Jay is sick. The kids had a stomach bug that he then got that stomach bug. And so it was Friday, and he knew he wouldn't be able to do service. So he asked me if I could do it, except I have all running around for Easter to do today. So what we're going to try to do is do a live premiere on YouTube. So I have pre-recording this talk, and then it should go live at service time and even have like an active chat. Knock on wood. That's what we're hoping for. So since that's the case, we'll kind of just dive right in. So Easter is like my favorite day of the year. As you guys know, since I'm this, just I love the Bible and everything like that. Easter is very, I don't know, I love it a lot, and I like it a lot more than Christmas, because I think it's a more important part of the story as a whole. But I didn't feel comfortable giving a traditional Easter talk or sermon because with Revolution, we don't really dive into always treating the Bible like it is historical, or like real true stuff. So I didn't want to come in here, talking about resurrection and being dead for 3 days and all this stuff, because sadly, for some reason, even though it should be inclusive, that doesn't feel like an inclusive talk. But I want to have something with a similar feeling to it. I wanted a feeling of new life and resurrection. And a few things came together for this talk to just kind of start to bloom and unfold in my head. And one thing, so yesterday, me and my wife, we just saw the new Super Mario Brothers movie, and it's great. And I won't go into any details, but there's a minor character that just has some throwaway jokes, and I was like, oh my, oh my god, that's me. Uh, Again, I won't do any like spoilers, but there's a scene in which a bunch of characters are sort of trapped, and they're trying to remain positive, like, no, all right, we could work this out, we could get out of this. And then there's this one character that they just keep cutting to this character, and they're like, nope, we're doomed, and life is suffering and misery, and there's nothing we could do about it. And every time they try to be optimistic, that character says something, and then one of the characters is just like, stop, we're depressed enough already. And so I didn't want that to be the case on Easter, that everyone's trying to be optimistic, and then I come in like, you know what really sucks? The state of the world. And then everyone's like, no, stop, we're depressed enough already. So so I didn't want to have an Easter service that felt like that. And a few days ago, a friend of mine sent me a text, and it wasn't like an alarming text, but it's the kind that was like, all right, we need to like step this up a notch. And the text was just simply saying, I've been really struggling with my depression the last 6 weeks. I just got out of a bad bout, and I feel it coming back again. And the message said, so if you pray, please pray for me, because I'm about to be going through it again. And, me and this particular friend, we have this kind of mutual bond of our mental health issues, but not in a way where it's like, oh, cool, you're depressed, I'm depressed, yeah. But like, they know that like, I understand where they're coming from. They don't have to try to jazz it up. They don't have to try to make it seem not as bad. um, as it is. And so, but getting a text like that is kind of like, ooh boy. So I texted other friends like, hey, if you want to just maybe give them a call, they seem to be really struggling, and I'll keep reaching out. And the only thing that made me feel a little uncomfortable about that text is the like asking for prayer, because I could do a whole talk on asking everybody what prayer is, because I don't really know what it is. I know what I was taught, but it never felt right to me. Even when I was like deep in the heart of Christianity, praying always just felt like talking to the ceiling. And then if you pray out loud, which I don't actually do, when I do pray, I never pray out loud because I find myself so concerned with how I'm sounding. Oh, you want to, even if you don't plan on it, it's just like, oh, my sounding poetic. Oh, is this like, there's no sincerity in prayer when I say it out loud, at least for me. Um, so I don't really know what prayer is. I had a great discussion with a Catholic monk that I met through a mutual friend in a rock band. Sounds weird, but it's a true story. But they were telling me that that's one of the reasons they love the rosary as a Catholic, because it takes all of the thinking out of it, and they're able to just recite a given prayer and keep track of it, and they don't have to worry about sounding flowery or poetic or what do I pray about. And that kind of reminded me of what I think prayer should be, and that's from the J.D. Salinger book Franny and Zoe, in which one of the characters wants to get to a place in which, by saying the same prayer over and over and over and over again, that it becomes like part of her, like the same as breathing. Just it's a constant state of prayer, and I wish I knew if that was the case or how to get there. But above that, this person that texted me knew that I was a safe place, and I sent a pretty lengthy response. I don't know how many people in chat message with me through text messaging or DMs, but I usually write a lot. So, but we'll get into that in a little bit. In order to uh, set the stage a little bit, I'm going to not spend too much time because, like I said, I don't want to be that character from Mario that's like, oh, it's Easter, we're depressed already. Stop doing this. um, but I did want to touch base on what my view of depression is really quick, and you'll see why when I get into the real meat and potatoes of this talk. It's a little My view of depression's a little weird, but it's the only thing that makes sense to me. And I feel that depression is this living, breathing entity. It's not like a mental infliction. It's not a chemical imbalance. Um, I'm not saying anything is like demonic possession or anything, but I feel like it's a living, breathing like adversary. And for any of us that are afflicted with that, and like maybe we're more prone to melancholy and depression. I'm sure you understand what I mean, where you could just feel it like coming back to life even after you've defeated it. And I know in the Harry Potter books, I heard that the Dementors were based off of what depression feels like. It's like this hovering black mass, like just gross and scary, and it just sucks all the life and all the joy and all the happiness out of you. And that makes sense, but those were external things, and I feel like take that and it's attacking you from the inside out, and that's kind of what it feels like. Any horror fans, I think the best representation of depression I've ever seen was in the horror movie the Babadook. And that's kind of also in containing depression. Feels like it just kind of like it it's chained up and it stays with you, and you just have to feed it sometimes so it doesn't get out of control. So I just thought that was great. Um, because even though it is, I feel, a living, breathing thing, um, I know that there's a huge mental component to it. And this one thing that sticks with me, and I always it, credit this line to the band The Waterliars, even though in the lyric themselves they're referencing someone else. But great band. Everyone listen to all their stuff. I know the drummer Andrew. He listens to Revolution sometimes, and he's got great solo stuff too. So everybody listen to this band. But in the song Linens, um, the the line goes, and when I woke up on the road, my head was killing, remembering something I've read in Milton that said the mind is a place unto itself, and in it makes a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. It obviously sounds better when they're singing it, and it actually sounds like it rhymes and stuff. But what what I get from that is the mind is a place unto itself, and what it's capable of doing is making a hell of heaven and a heaven of hell. And we see that in ourselves a lot when we tend to maybe fight to keep ourselves down. It's not something we're doing actively, but it happens. And then if you are afflicted with depression, you know that you could be in heaven. You could be surrounded by all of your friends and all of your family, and and you still will feel alone. I think Bright Eyes has a line that says, "I'm alone at a table of friends." I and So it's the mind has a capability of doing that. You could be in the best place in the world, but if you're depressed, it's hell. And if you're depressed, your hell almost feels like heaven, and you fight to keep it. And it reminded me of, so the Catholic monk that I just mentioned earlier, that mutual friend. Um, his name's Aaron, and the band retired, but he was in a band, and they were touring, and this is years and years and years ago, and they had a tour bus, and on it, just because it was like an old Greyhound bus that they refurbished and painted, and they painted like a nice forest scape on the side of the bus. And in an interview, someone was just doing those fluff questions, and they asked about the bus and asked why it was a forest that was painted on the bus, and almost, it was kind of like, oh, is that just, it looks better, as a forest, it's not as bleak as a desert. And my friend Aaron said, well, if I'm not happy in the desert, I'm not going to be happy in the forest. And that kind of has that same vibe of the mind being a place into itself, and it will make the heaven of hell and the hell of heaven. So if he's not happy in the forest, he's not going to be happy anywhere, because the unhappiness is within him. And so these are the ways that I kind of look at depression and mental health. And so in my response to my friend that reached out and texted me, a lot of the stuff that I was emphasizing was how, you know, depression's not new for us. These battles are not new for us, and we've overcome every one of them before. We're gonna be 40 years old, like, and we've been dealing with this for almost our whole lives, and we've gotten this far. So, time and time again, we beat it, and yes, it's exhausting, but we beat it. We emerge. We keep going. We fall. We beat it. We emerge, and we keep going. And um, in that message, it occurred to me that I was using a lot of imagery from David and Goliath, because that's a lot of imagery I use to myself when I'm in those in those moods, and I kind of reflect on the story and try to use it to motivate me. And so today we're going to talk about David and Goliath, and that's going to be the real bulk of the talk. And I just want to say that I'm sure there's all sorts of studies and history that will say that, oh, maybe this didn't happen, or this person wasn't real, or that's not what it went down. But for the sake of this talk and how I view it, we're going to take the story at face value. As you guys know from maybe my last talk, I don't really concern myself with if it's fact or fiction or if it's literal or metaphor, because the outcome is the same and how it helps us is the same. So we're just going to take it right at face value because that's where I think that it gets a lot of its strength. It's my energy drink. So I'm going. Let's look at the story of David and Goliath. Like zoom out, see the whole picture of it. So at the time that this is taking place, David's already working for King Saul in a roundabout way. If you guys know that song Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen or anybody else that came after it, Jeff Buckley I think has the best version of it. But so the song Hallelujah, and it starts with I heard there was a sacred chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. So that is taken from the Bible, and what was happening was King Saul was kind of plagued, especially at night when he was trying to go to sleep, with bad thoughts and discomfort and anxiety and depression. Um, Sounds familiar, right? And so what they found was that this small kid, young man, probably, I don't know if he was a teenager or something, played the harp. And when he played the harp, Saul was soothed and calmed. And so he kind of worked in Saul's court to just play the harp for him, and calm him down. And at the same time, though, David was a shepherd, and he was in charge. He was in charge of watching sheep and keeping them safe. And I believe it was his family, like his dad's sheep. Um, and so, with being a shepherd, it's not just hey sheep, let's go over here and eat, and then go over here and eat. There was a an aspect of danger to it because sheep are these animals that can't defend themselves, and so lions and bears and wolves, if wolves are in that part of the world, but lions and bears I know specifically, um, would be like, oh, here's my traveling buffet, and they would go to eat these sheep. And so the shepherd, along with having to keep the sheep in line and get them from place to place, would also have to defend them from these other animals. And now this is an unverified story, but I heard it and I thought it was great, and I pray that it is true because the imagery of it is just incredible. That I heard that when a animal, say like a lion or something, ate the sheep, that the shepherd would have to do everything in its power to get the sheep back and into the herd. And if they could not accomplish that and the sheep died and was killed by this other animal, that they would have to at least wrestle back the leg bones to bring it back to whoever flock it was, to show, sorry that I lost one of your sheep to this animal, but as you could see from bringing back these bones, I fought like the Dickens to try to save this. It wasn't just oh well. see you later. So, but I don't know if that was a common practice or if that was something I heard in a sermon when I was younger and assumed that it was true. So, so David was a shepherd, and he was also playing the harp for Saul to soothe his mind. Now, David had three older brothers. I would tell you their names, but they are straight up biblical names that I don't even know if I could pronounce. So they were in King Saul's army, and they stayed with the army. Um, but David traveled back and forth for work. He like commuted, so he would go play the harp when needed. Then he would go back to Bethlehem and he would tend the sheep and go back and forth. And so the brothers are in the army, and the army's gearing up for war, and it's going to be the Israelites versus the Philistines. And the way this battle was working was they met at the Valley of Elah, which it was two high grounds across from each other with the valley in between. And one army is here, one army's here. And they're gearing up to fight, but the way they were fighting this battle, I don't know if it was all battles or this specific one, was that the Philistine army would send out their best soldier, and then the Israelites would send out their best soldier, and the winner of that conflict wins the war. So, but what happened was the Philistines, their soldier, their best soldier, was Goliath, who was like 9 feet tall. I think some accounts said that he had like 6 fingers and 6 toes. He was just a monster of a dude. I think just his chest plate alone weighed 125 pounds. He needed people to carry his shields because they were so big that other people needed to carry before war. And so every morning Goliath would go out and he would just mock the Israelites. He's like, "I'm the best champion. Send me your best champion. And then when I kill you guys, like kill that champion, you'll be our slaves. And if somehow you beat me, we'll be your slaves." And it was working that every morning for 40 days, he came out and he taunted them, and they got so scared that would retreat, and they had no one to fight or even want to fight this giant um, of a man. And so, I mentioned in my last talk that I've been watching a lot of wrestling. Like, imagine Andre the Giant or the Big Show, and if they were standing next to Goliath, they would look tiny. And not like microscopically tiny, but it would probably come up to their, Goliath's like shoulder or something like that. Um, so just big, terrifying guy. And so for 40 days this is going on, and then one particular morning, Jesse, who is David's father, says, "David, go bring this food to your brothers on the front lines." And so, if not the front lines, in the army camp. And so David goes to bring this food to his brothers, and for the first time, David hears Goliath come out, make fun of the Israelites, make fun of their God, make fun of all their soldiers, and everybody's scared. And so David's like, "What is this? What is going on here?" And so they fill him in, and they're like, "Oh, even Saul is so excited for someone to kill this man that there's this huge reward." And so David's kind of like inquiring about it. He must have some. I probably thought it was the brothers' hang-ups, but the older I get, I realize that David probably was a jerk, and well, I know he was later on, but even as a kid, because David's like, he's asking, "Wait, so if someone kills Goliath, they get the king's favor, they get a wife, they get this land." Oh, very interesting. And his brothers are like, "You're always like scheming. I know you. You're prideful and you're sneaky." And even David's like, "What? I can't ask questions now?" It's very comical in that sense. But David's like, if no one's gonna fight this guy, I'll fight him. Take me to King Saul and we'll do this. And so David goes to meet with King Saul, and David's like a scrawny shepherd boy. I'm sure he's probably like ripped because everybody was at that time because you're just walking constantly and having to make everything by hand. But overall, even at that time, the people in the army, the king, they saw him as small, and they're like, you're smaller than all of us. How are you going to go out and kill this big, giant 9 foot Goliath whose chest plate alone probably weighed more than David did? It was like 125 pounds. So if everyone's saying how small David is, I'm sure he's probably roughly around that size. And so they're like, everything about this giant is bigger and stronger than you. Even his armor would crush you. And then David goes, well, I'm a shepherd, and as part of my job, if a bear comes to attack the sheep, if a lion comes to attack the sheep, I have to kill that creature, kill that animal to save the sheep. And I do it. And I do it time and time again. And this giant is no different than those creatures. So if I could do that, I could do this. So I am going to fight him. And so they're like, all right, you're crazy, but if you want to fight him, here, let's at least get you ready for battle. And they put all this armor on David: chest plate, helmet, you know, leg guards, arm guards. They give him a huge sword, shield, and David's a small dude. So David takes a step. It's like a step or two, and he's like, I can't walk in this. I can't move. I can't do anything. And even is basically like, well, if God's gonna protect me, I don't need this stuff, right? And so he takes off all the armor so that he can move and he could be free. And he has his shepherding stick, which is not a weapon. It's literally just like a staff for him to walk. Maybe it's got a crook on it if he needs to grab a sheep that's straying. And he goes down to the river and he picks up 5 smooth stones, which is imagery that I love. And even in my car for probably like 20 years now, I have 5 smooth stones like in the ashtray. And so he goes out, no armor. All he's got is a walking stick and 5 stones and a slingshot. And it's not like a Dennis the Menace slingshot, right? It's 2 straps of leather with a pouch, and they swing it, let go of one of the straps, and it shoots the rock out. And so he goes out to meet Goliath. Goliath looks at him. It's like, what is this? What am I, a dog that you bring me a stick to play with? You know, because he's got his staff. Goliath really says this. Like, what am I, a dog? I'm gonna play fetch. You're gonna throw the stick at me. And David basically says to him what he said to King Saul to get out there. He's like, I'm not scared of you. You're making fun of my God. You're making fun of my people, my friends, my army, my family, everything. And so I'm going to kill you where you stand right now. Goliath's laughing, right? Like, ho, ho, ho. And so David just takes a sling, throws one of the smooth stones, hits Goliath right in the head. Now there's 2 different accounts. I kind of combine them. Hits David in the Goliath in the head. Goliath falls down. Definitely concussed. If he is even still alive, and then David, with Goliath's own sword, cuts off Goliath's head because the Old Testament is very violent and brutal. And so that's the story of David and Goliath and how David defeats Goliath. And the reason why I love this story and I use it for my mental health and depression is because it's so rich in imagery. Even the fact that the war is fought on the precipice of like falling into like a valley, like a valley of the shadow of death, maybe even, right? And actually, I'm wondering because David probably wrote that psalm. I wonder if that's literally what he's talking about, the Valley of Elah. Anybody want to connect those dots and let me know? Um, right, but he has to walk up to the precipice of this valley, and day in and day out, there's this just tormenting, mocking, like giant that's insurmountable and just like in their face. Um, and but above all those things, David was able to assess the situation as like, wait a second, he's scary, and we're on the edge of this abyss, and I have to crawl into the abyss where I gotta meet this foe. But he's no different from anything that I've accomplished before. He's no different from that bear I killed last week to defend the sheep, or the lion from a month ago that I had to kill, and I did that with nothing but a slingshot and my walking stick. And this guy's no different. Um, and the um, and another thing that stands out about this too is David's not a reluctant hero, and in the Bible, that's mostly what we get, with a few exceptions. Like um, was it Isaiah? I think he's the one that said like, "Here I am, like send me." David's like, "I'll go kill Goliath. I don't care." And then but usually you have your people like Moses, where God calls on them, and Moses is like, "No, I have a speech impediment. I stutter. I'm not going to be the spokesperson for your people." And God's like, "No, that's why what you think is your weakness is your strength, and that's why I'm calling upon you." Right? We have Gideon. He was one of the judges. He was hiding. He was doing all his farming by at nighttime, because he was so scared of people in the daytime. You have Jonah, who literally tried to run in the wrong direction. So you have mostly heroes of the Bible that are very reluctant, and so to have David be like, "No, send me, I'll do it." That's very interesting, and it's a lot of courage to do that. Um, but if we think about it, David could not fight Goliath when he was covered in all of that armor. So they covered him with everything to try to protect him, and all it did was weigh him and slow him down. And if we look at ourselves kind of in that sense, like, what is the armor that we put on ourselves thinking that we're protecting ourselves, but really maybe it's like a self-sabotage type thing, in which we're just like, oh, I have the the breastplate of solitude, and the helmet of just staying inside because I'm depressed, the shield of staying in bed all day. And what happens is it really kind of limits us, and it's very, 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 very hard to take that armor off. Don't get me wrong. Um, you know, it's I Paul Simon has that song "I Am a Rock," right? And he's just saying that, like, I'm a rock, I'm an island. An island never cries, like a rock is never sad or alone. And in with mental health, you can start to feel like that. But is that just more armor that we put on ourselves that actually is counteracting? Like, it's not. It's actually not protecting us, but making us more vulnerable and more susceptible. And um, so David has to some extent remove this armor. He has to open himself up. He's got to be vulnerable. He's got to get exposed and uncomfortable in order to stand a chance. And I don't know the significance of the five smooth stones, right? It would make sense if he gathered 12 stones, right? One for each tribe. Um, but he takes five. And the way I just look at it is he doesn't go out there completely unarmed. He doesn't go like, "Oh, I'm just going to need the one rock, so I'm set." He takes five. So he does protect himself in some way, but he just wants to be able to move and dodge if needed. So we could still strip our armor off of all the things that stop us from stop our progress. Like we could take all that off, but still have some protection behind us. And one way that I do that personally, and it will change for everybody, but I often know when I want to not do something, odds are in that state, that's exactly what I should be doing, and that's why I don't want to do it. There'll be a lot of times where my wife will ask if I want to go for a walk, and I really don't want to, but I know, like, oh no, I don't want to, so I probably should. And so I'll do that. And these things are not cure alls. It's not like I go for a walk and come back and I'm, seeing animated birds land on my finger and all this stuff. But it does help chip away at it from time to time. And it's not so much the walk and the fresh air and the sunshine, right? Because that's what like our relatives tell us. Like, oh, you're depressed? Go outside. Go for a walk. And you're just trying to explain like that's not how it works. So it's not hurting us, right, to go outside and be in the fresh air and get some sun, but also just the fact that we're stripping off the armor of no, I'm staying. I don't feel like doing it. Like no, right? That's just a heavy chest plate that's keeping us down. So if we go like, all right, I'll go for a walk, right? So it's just the act of doing that is stripping some of the protective armor um, from us. But more importantly, it's just the when David approaches Goliath, it's not he's not looking at the struggle ahead of him. He's not ignoring it, but he's looking at it. But what he's focused on is all the struggles just like this that he overcame to get to this situation. And so I killed the bear, I killed the lion, I'll kill Goliath, and then I'll repeat it the next time a bear comes, the next time a lion comes, the next time Goliath comes. Like it just live, die, repeat. The great movie, by the way. So that's why I'm so big on that story, especially when it comes to mental health, because it's just so much that we can pull from, and whether it's real or metaphor or what have you, the story stays the same, and the stuff that we get from it stays the same. The strength that we get from it stays the same. And David in general is tricky because um because in a lot of ways like he sucks, like he is the worst. But then in the same breath, he's called a man after God's own heart. And you're like, but he sucks. Like how is someone that's so not great a man after God's own heart? And I what I think it is when David repents, like he is sincere in it. Like he tries to actually correct his behavior and not just go, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then repeats and does it again. Um but also he he's like incredibly human. And again, this is not excusing any of the horrible stuff he's done, because he's done horrible stuff. But you have someone that is in the king's favor, and he defeats Goliath, and he becomes king later on, and then his psalms are just like when Jesus says, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" He's quoting a psalm that David wrote, because even in all that, David is like, "God, why are you? Where are you? I thought we slay giants together, and now I'm in bed and I'm miserable, and I wish the ceiling would fall on me, and my bones ache because I'm just so sad." And so that's really interesting to see from that non-reluctant hero, the hero that was like, "Send me in, put me in, coach, I got this," and then the flip side of it, he's like, "Man, life sucks. I hate this." So he's just so human. So that's something that we can relate to, and he's also open to correction and having those tough conversations. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is so David's doing the kingdom stuff gets to his head. He's king and he's just trying to have his cake and eat it too. And he's trying to do some good things, but he's just also doing horrible things. And he's like so blinded by either his power or believing that he's in God's favor that he just kind of runs amok. And as you know, then he lusts after Bathsheba. And I don't want to comment on that story too much because it's a horrible story, and to my knowledge, even in any of this, there's no real consent from Bathsheba, so I do not want to dissect that because it's dicey. And but all to say is like that's the type of person David is, right? He's just really a crummy person and at times downright horrible. And so the prophet, he's kind of like the prophet, Nathan, and he goes, "All right, David, let me tell you a story. You have a rich man, and he's got everything that someone could need and want. And then you have someone who's not rich, and all they have is one sheep that they love above all things. And being a former shepherd, you know what that love is for that animal and the care that goes into it. And one day the rich man is asked for some livestock, but instead of giving his own livestock, he takes the precious lamb from the poor man and uses that, and that's how they make the feast. What do you think should happen to that man?" And David's like outraged. He's like, that rich man should be killed. You can't do that. That's horrible. How could you have so much and then take from somebody else?" Completely oblivious that Nathan's talking about him and Uriah and Bathsheba and all the other stuff that David has done. And so when David's flipping out over this, Nathan can't even believe it. He's like, "David, I'm talking about you. It was a metaphor. It was an analogy about you." And hearing that, David is like, he doesn't try to, "Oh, no, no, wait, what I meant was," it like hits him like a bucket of water. He's just like, "Whoa, what?" And he was like, "I have been so terrible." And he like repents and he recants and he does what he can to set it right, which obviously some things can't be set right, but it changes him. He doesn't justify it. He doesn't try to shrug it off. It just he's able to have those tough conversations and tough disagreements and disagree well and learn when he's wrong. And there's a great line in it in which also Nathan's like, "God gave you this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And if all of that would not have been enough, he would have given you more. The reason God didn't give you more is because everything he gave you was enough." And there's a cool thing that happens in the details of the story of David and Goliath, in which they keep saying, in different contexts, "the birds of the air." And now when I hear the birds of the air, I think of when Jesus said, like, "Look at the birds of the air, like they do nothing to plan for futures. They have no power, but God takes care of them. Aren't you worth more than birds?" And so in the same story, Jesus then talks about, the lilies of the field and Solomon in all his splendor was not clothed as great and beautiful as one of these. And um and so that's an interesting carryover that David and Goliath talks about the birds of the birds of the air, and Jesus talks about that in the same line that he references Solomon, who is David's son. So there's a really cool connection there. Not sure what it means, but I noticed that when I was writing this. Um, and then also another thing in why David is a man after God's own heart is, even though he's all the bad things, we've mentioned some of the good things that go on with him and how he sees when he's wrong and he's sincere and he tries to make it right. But he actually shows grace, which is weird. When a new king comes into power, very much like say Game of Thrones, they try to wipe out all remaining people of the last kingdom so there could be no uprising or anything. But because Saul at one point was anointed by God to be the king, David, even when he had opportunities, when David and Saul were warring, David had multiple opportunities to kill Saul, and he wouldn't do it because he's like, God appointed him. I can't. I'm not going to touch him. And then when Saul and Jonathan was David's best friend, maybe lover, but all the Bible says was he loved him like more than a brother, more than himself. Um, when they died, instead of wiping out their remaining heirs and court and everything, David embraces them and brings them into his own, further unifying the tribes that were all disjointed. Right, Saul started that unification, and then David continued it on by showing um, grace. And so a lot of these traits make sense when you hear that Jesus is called the Son of David. And that's done, I believe, by Matthew. It's a few times, but Matthew has the whole genealogy going from David, all ancestry.com, 23andme, all the way to Jesus to show that he is from the line of David. And but that's where we have you know tough conversations, gentle correction, showing grace, um, unifying disparate people, right? So that's very much Jesus's bag as well. And so that was interesting. But above all, it's a David's story is a story about failing forward, which is a phrase that, out of all places, I heard from when the Undertaker was in the inducted into the Wrestling Hall of Fame. He gave a speech and he talked about failing forward, and I love the phrase "fail again, fail better." And that's what David's story is really about. Is he just keeps failing forward. He doesn't stumble backwards. He fails and he moves on, and he fails better and he fails better. And he's doing the best that he can. And I say that because that's a mini kind of breakthrough that I had in therapy myself. Is when I was like, getting so frustrated with different people and society as a whole. My therapist said, well, remember that they're doing the best they can. And normally when people are like, oh, I'm doing the best I can, they're doing the best I can, it never hits me. Like it's just words, right? You're like, yeah, I know, but they could probably be doing better or trying harder. But then I really stopped and thought of, like, no, they are doing the best that they can. And um I'm reminded of this song by this band Beirut, and I might have mentioned it before, but in the song they talk about a candle and they talk about a campfire. And now they're both fire, they're both flames, but to expect a candle to do what a campfire does is not fair to the candle. Because even though they're made of the same stuff, they're two different things. Just the same as it's not fair to expect a campfire to be carried room to room and being able to read by it. It's like that's what a candle's for. But you're not, if you expect your candle to warm up your whole house, that's not going to happen either. Because our 100%, giving it your all, giving it, changes from day to day. What's your 100% today is not your 100% yesterday, and it might not be your 100% tomorrow. I have a friend that was going through some struggles, and she was telling me that she was like almost like feeling guilty because she didn't even get out of bed until 11 o'clock, and she, like in passing, she's like, but then I made lunch and I took a shower, and with like no irony, I was like, but that's great because any other day of your life, waking up early, making meals, taking a shower is not even worthy of mentioning because it's just a given. It's just what your day entails and there's no need for it. But on some days when you're really in the valley of Elah, when you're really in the abyss, making lunch and taking a shower is equivalent to slaying Goliath that day. And you did it and you're telling the tale of it. And then tomorrow, who knows? It might not even be a blip. It might just be you wake up, you get dressed, or take a shower, you get dressed, you make food, and it's not even worth mentioning. But because your 100% is different that day, but the day before, that what you were doing the literal best you can, and doing what a candle does or doing what a campfire does. And you can't expect that to be your baseline for every day. So, like that's why my therapist was like, they're doing the best they can, and you're doing the best you can. And so we're going to wrap it up right here, because I just kind of wanted that to be the feeling of like life and rejuvenation of, like on the days where you want to be a rock and you want to be an island, that you can be like, no, that's just weighing me down. I my 100% today might just be brushing my teeth and getting out of bed before noon, but that's a giant that I slayed today, just like I did yesterday, and the bear before that, and the lion before that, and I'll do it again tomorrow. And so we've gotten this far, right? Every time we've felt face to face with a giant that we couldn't overcome, we've overcome it, and you're here listening to this talk or the podcast of it. So you've made it this far. And it's not like life was easy peasy and this is the first time you're meeting a bear or a lion or a giant. Oh my. You've done it every day up until then, every time, and you've been successful, and this will be no different. And David wrote a lot of songs in the Bible. They're psalms, but if you look at the headlines of the psalms, it often say, well, you know, the court musicians played this song by written by David. And so we're gonna end this with some song lyrics. One is a song called "Stay Alive," and I recommend all these songs to everybody. It's called "Stay Alive." It's by Jose Gonzalez, but it has the line that says, "We'll do whatever just to stay alive. Look at the sun as a new day rise, as new days rise. Dawn is coming. Open your eyes." Right. So even when it's dark and bleak and you're in the valley, dawn is coming. Right. Like night never lasts forever. It feels like it, but it doesn't last forever. And then dawn is coming. And there's a line from the Mountain Goats in a song called "Damn These Vampires," and says, "When the sun comes up, try not to hate the light." And that really is that like hit me. I think it's literally about vampires, but I was the state I was in when I was listening to music while I wrote this, and that line stuck out because sometimes we do get that Stockholm syndrome to our depression, and anything that tries to help us we kind of hate, right? We make a hell of heaven and a heaven of hell, and we put ourselves in all this armor to protect ourselves, and all it does is weigh us down. So when the dawn is coming and a new day rises, when the sun comes up, let's just not, just don't hate the light. Like you don't have to embrace it, but just don't hate it. And one day, it's my goal in life to get to a place, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, where in it might even be an unreleased track, but the band Me Without You has a song that's like, whatever comes, let it come, whatever goes, let it go. And I hope to one day get there, that anything that comes my way, I just let it come, and if it leaves me, I just let it leave. And I think that's inspired by a story, maybe by Rumi or Hafez or something, in which they were like, "Oh, my bowl is full of rice, like praise God," and then some days it's like, "Oh, my bowl is empty, praise God," And so it's like, one day I want to get to that place where I can do that, but until then, I'll just have to settle for a life of like Modest Mouse, the song "Float On," in which the whole song is about bad things happening, and then an optimistic spin on that. Like, I backed my car into a cop car, but the cop just drove away, so it was okay. Or I got scammed, but you know what? Next time I'll know more to not get scammed, and we'll all just float on. You know, all right already. We'll just all float on, and so that's just kind of what I want to say for this talk, this message, that even when things get a bit too heavy, will all float on okay. And we've done it before and we'll do it again. And so everyone go have a great Easter. And that actually finishes my journal. This is all the talks that I've given for Revolution since my first one. And now this journal is done and I need a new one. So that was a lot of fun. So anyways, everybody have a great Easter. Enjoy times with friends and family, and we should be back to normal next week. So until then, let's hope that this video works, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. To make your 100% tax-deductible donation today, please visit revolutionchurch.com/donate. You can also learn more by clicking the donate section on the website.